Welcome to the NJ Criminal Podcast. In episode 3 of the series, Meg and Jeff discuss several cases dealing with New Jersey motor vehicle statutes, prohibiting license tag frames that conceal a portion of the license tag, and New Jersey motor vehicle statutes prohibiting tinted windows, in terms of when police can lawfully stop a driver who is violating these laws. In the Consolidated appeals of State v. Darius J. Carter and State v. Miguel A. Rosado, the New Jersey Supreme Court decided to narrowly interpret NJSA 39-3-33, which makes it illegal to have a license plate frame that conceals any part of the tag.
All right, very good. Tough case to get through. Next case is very interesting because this case, in my mind, touches all motorists. And I just get a kick out of it because over the years, you might have gotten stopped because your license plate was covered, or you had something funny going on. Used to be years ago, you had your license plate light was out, things like that. And when this came out, I went in the parking lot of my gym, and there's a lot of people that work in law enforcement, prosecutors' office, etc. I went around, looked at all their license plates to see how much might have been covered up by their fancy license plate holder for their favorite team or their kid's college or whatever. And I teased a few of them, and I just thought the court really, I think this is Justice Fernandez-Vina, if I'm not mistaken, did a kind of a good job breaking this down of what the police should be looking for when they're stopping someone in association with an insufficiently clear license plate.
Right. So basically, this was a twin cases, Consolidated appeals. I think it was actually Rabner who delivered the opinion.
It's Rabner.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry. It's State v. Carter and State v. Rosado. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, no, and
should have warmed that one up.
And what I loved was the first two paragraphs of this Consolidated opinion. I got to read it to you because it sounds like what you just described. Justice Rabner starts by saying, "Walk through any crowded parking lot and look carefully at the license plates. Many, if not most of them, have frames that cover up part of the markings on the plate. Car dealers throughout the state supply many of the frames to advertise their dealerships. A variety of other organizations do likewise. In some instances, an entire phrase like Garden State is covered by the frame. In other cases, only a very small part of New Jersey or Garden State is covered, and the words are entirely legible." And then he goes on to go into the details of the case. So this was, as I said, twin cases, and it really focuses on a motor vehicle statute, and each of the cases, each of the defendants, Carter and Roman Rosado, the court found came to a different conclusion. So basically, Mr. Carter, we'll start with him. Mr. Carter gets stopped in September of 2014, and he had this plate around his tag, and the words Garden State were covered on the license plate. And the reason that the police stopped him was, that infraction. The motor vehicle statute is 39:3-33, and it basically says no person shall drive a motor vehicle which has a license plate frame or identification marker that conceals or otherwise obscures any part of any marking imprinted upon the vehicle's registration plate. So the fact that the Garden State was covered provided the reasonable articulable suspicion to pull him over. He's driving without a license. This sounds like many of my clients. He's driving without a license. The police learn he's got 2 outstanding warrants, so they arrest him. They search him into arrest. They find some heroin and cocaine on him, and he filed a motion to suppress the drugs that were seized. Basically on the basis of an unlawful stop. Trial court denied the motion to suppress. Said the stop was pretextual, right? But that the law is what it is, right? Clear reading of the law, that the law basically bars concealing any markings on a license plate, and appellate division affirmed that decision. Now, that's the facts of Carter. Roman Rosado occurred a couple years later, actually, in April of 16. And in that particular case, officer says he's on a, quote, proactive detail, stopping a lot of cars, basically, for motor vehicle infractions in order to, develop a criminal investigation. He's driving behind Roman Rosado, notices a bracket around the rear license plate that covered about 10 or 15% of the words Garden State. So, stops the car based on suspected violation of Section 33. Learns again he's got 2 outstanding warrants. After spotting a garment wrapped around something bulky off inside the car, officer finds an unloaded handgun. So he gets charged, indicted, and moves to suppress the gun as the fruit of an unlawful stop. Trial court again, same as with Carter, denies the motion, quoting, basically the statute and saying that, although there are, minimal obstructions on his plate, the statute bars the, quote, obstruction of any markings on the plate. Now, here, the appellate division reversed, finding that the plate's markings were not concealed or obscured within the meaning of the statute, and so there was no reasonable basis for the police to stop his car. So the appellate division reached a different, result in Roman Rosado's case. So New Jersey Supreme Court grants cert and basically goes through the statute and basically interprets this statute 39.3-33 in that it requires all markings on a license plate to be legible or identifiable, and basically says, look, if a license frame conceals or obscures a marking in a way that they can't identify the tag, right, then the driver's going to be in violation of the law. But, in practice, if a registration letter or number is not legible, the statute would apply. But if you just can't see part of the word Garden State, there's not going to be a violation. So applying this standard, which is a kind of a reasonable standard, right? It's interpreting the statute, pretty narrowly, and I would suggest probably reasonably. And under that standard, Carter's license plate, which covered the phrase Garden State entirely, violated the law. So there was a reasonable articulable suspicion to stop him, and so his conviction's going to stand. On the other hand, Roman Rosado's plate frame did not cover Garden State. It only partially covered about 10 or 15% of that slogan, could still read, it was still legible. So his stop was unlawful. And remember, he's the guy that had the gun. And so, I see this as a defense attorney all the time. These motor vehicle stops based upon kind of very vague motor vehicle provisions, and they're pretextual stops. And then ultimately, guy or girl's got a warrant, and then that, leads to searches of their person and or the car, depending upon the circumstances. And so, here the court comes to a reasonable resolution. We're gonna interpret this a bit narrowly in this case, and this protects the rights of the individuals. And it's impressive that they did, especially in that it did result in the suppression of a handgun, which in my experience, courts are generally more likely to come to a conclusion when you're dealing with gun cases that's not in the to the benefit of the defendant. So we've got again unanimous decision in this consolidated opinion dealing with both of these cases.
And I think it makes a lot of sense what the and of course it is Justice Ravner, but what he kind of says at the end and says something like, this takes away the discretion, takes away the taint of a police officer watching car after car go by, with one of these license plate holders blocking part of it or this or that and saying, you know what, today everybody with a red ball cap and a license plate holder, I'm pulling them over. And tomorrow it could be a blue ball cap. It takes away the randomness of these stops that at least there's a perception that police might be stopping this group or that group and using this kind of vague license plate standard. Now it's very clear. And the other thing I like about this from a policy standpoint, it's easily teachable to police officers. Right. You could put up a slide.
Right line.
If you're giving a class, you're going, this is Garden State's gone, stop.
Right.
You can clearly see it still says Garden State or NJ, and you can clearly see the important part of the license plate. No good. No reason for stop. I like that because I find as I read these cases, trying to think about everybody, all the stakeholders, and it just becomes more and more complex for police officers to do the right thing, and training. I think they've probably got to train about 1/3 of the time to really, really keep up and be very, very sharp. And I need a warrant here. I don't need a warrant there. I need Miranda here. I don't need Miranda here. I can make a stop here. Can't make a stop here.
Yeah, I see a lot of stops.
Get a bright line.
Yeah, I see a lot of stops if that, the light's not out on the license plate, and there's been some case law on that. Now, the thing that I thought was interesting in this particular case is that the defendants were asking the New Jersey Supreme Court to find this statute unconstitutional. And the court declined to do that. The other thing that I noticed that I wanted to just comment on is that the New Jersey Supreme Court recently granted cert in a case called State versus David L. Smith. And the issue that's going to be heard by the court in that when they hear it is whether or not a detective had a reasonable articulable suspicion of a motor vehicle offense when a defendant, Mr. Smith, was pulled over for tinted windows. Now, I read the appellate division in that case because that's a case that I'm very interested in watching when the New Jersey Supreme Court ultimately decides it, because I can't tell you how many of my clients get pulled over for tinted windows. I tell my clients all the time, take the tint off. You're asking to be pulled over. Take it off. And there's a lot of I know a lot of people that have tint on their windows. It's in New Jersey. There is a couple statutes. They're back-to-back statutes, 39-3-74 and 39-3-75. 74 says every motor vehicle having a windshield shall be equipped with at least one device in good working order for cleaning rain, snow, or other moisture, so as to provide clear vision, and all such devices shall be so constructed and installed as to be operated or controlled by the driver. No person shall drive any motor vehicle with any non-transparent material on the front windshield. 39-375 goes on to say no person shall drive any motor vehicle equipped with safety glazing material which causes undue or unsafe distortion of visibility. So, the appellate division in Smith's case that came out back in April of this year, basically affirmed the conviction and basically, said, it was a good stop. And that there was ample basis for the police to pull him over for the tinted window violation. I don't think, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think that the court on appeal to the New Jersey Supreme Court, that the New Jersey Supreme Court is going to look at the constitutionality of that statute. I think the issue is just, in this particular case, whether or not the detectives had a reasonable articulable suspicion to pull him over. I would like to see them address the constitutional issue, so we'll have to see what happens. But that's just another example of kind of a little bit of an obscure motor vehicle statute that provides the basis for the police to interact with somebody, and then, is that reasonable? And then oftentimes it leads to the recovery of contraband that leads to very, very serious charges.
Yes,
that balancing test, individual rights versus public safety, right?
Public safety, and it's another gun case. The guy shoves something. The police officer sees him shove something towards the console, and they immediately jump in the car, and it turns out to be a gun and bullets.
Oh yeah, he had a
Another
38
gun-
Smith and
another gun
Wesson,
case.
and he had hollow point bullets, and so
Yeah.
he ends up getting a certain person charge, and so again, it's justices are understandably not real keen on suppressing guns, but that tinted window statute, I just see it so much. I'd like to see how the New Jersey Supreme Court rules on that, and hopefully they'll apply a narrow interpretation of it as well as they did in the case we just talked about.
Oh yeah, the Carter case. Yeah, give another clear standard
Right.
for everybody to work off of, and I really like when we get those kind of results out of the court.
Don't forget to subscribe and like the show on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere you listen.